Late at night, I was woken up by an indescribable sound. The sound came from my mother's room. I found my dad was on the night shift recently and couldn't possibly be bothering my mom. Could it be my mom was cheating on my dad with another man? Thinking of this, I quickly got out of bed, not even bothering to put on my shoes, and hurried towards my mother's room. My mother's door was not completely closed, and through the gap, I saw a tall and thin, strange man lying on top of my mother. And my mother closed her eyes, looking intoxicated. I gritted my teeth. I really wished I could just grab a kitchen knife and kill the man. But I was afraid that things would get out of hand, and if my dad found out, it would ruin our family. I took a deep breath and took out my phone to record a video. The next morning, my mother acted as if nothing had happened and called me to get up for breakfast. I couldn't control my temper and said angrily, "My dad is so good to you. How could you do this to him?" My mother looked at me in bewilderment. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I yelled, "You're cheating. Last night you were with a strange man behind my dad's back." My mother slapped me in the face, her body trembling with anger. "How dare you slander your mother like this? Are you possessed?" She hit me so hard that my ears were buzzing. I immediately took out my phone and opened the video in the gallery. "Take a good look at it yourself." The video was dim, and I could only see my mother with her eyes closed, her lips moaning, and her body constantly twisting. However, there was no tall, thin man on top of her. Where was this man? How did he disappear? The chill ran down my spine. A terrifying thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Maybe it wasn't a person lying on my mother last night. My mother glared at me and asked, "Where's the strange man?" "Is he?" I immediately apologized to my mother and asked her mom, "Have you encountered any dead people recently? Or have you been to a mass grave or a funeral home?" My mother shook her head. "No. I've been the same as usual lately, just going back and forth between work and the supermarket. Humans and ghosts are different. Unless there is a causal relationship, ghosts will not easily entangle with humans. But once entangled, it will never end." The more I thought about it, the more worried I became, so I hurriedly sent a message to my boyfriend James Wilson, who was catching ghosts in California. "James, my mom seems to be haunted." James immediately called me back and asked me what was going on. When it came to ghosts, I couldn't care less about being embarrassed anymore, and I told him everything that happened in my mother's bed last night. "This is a lustful ghost." James's expression became very embarrassed. He frowned and said lustful ghosts or lustful people before they were alive. After they died and became ghosts, they like to have sex with women and suck their brain energy. After 7 days, your mother will die. I started to panic. Then what should I do? Otherwise, I will take my mother to a hotel for a few days and wait until the 7 days are over. "No, this lustful ghost has left a mark on your mother. You can't escape it." James pondered for a while and said, "Well, you ask your father not to go out at night, just stay at home with your mother, with a man's young energy. The lustful ghost will be afraid." I hurriedly nodded in agreement. But James' brows did not relax at all. He added, "If the lustful ghost can't get to your mother, it will definitely come to you. I guess something will happen to you tonight." At the thought of that tall and thin ghost lying on top of me, I got goosebumps all over my body and felt very scared. "James, what should I do?" "Go to a funeral supply store and buy a female paper figurine, and then buy a set of red mourning clothes. Put the paper figurine on the bed, but don't cover it with a quilt. On the other end of the video, James earnestly instructed, by the way, the morning clothes you buy must be red. Red morning clothes can cover your living breath. After you put on these red morning clothes, hide under the bed. This ghost is different from humans. It walks on tiptoe, so it can't bend down and find you under the bed. I ran to the funeral supply store like crazy. Soon, I bought the funeral paper figurine. However, I ran all over the street and couldn't find any red morning clothes. The shopkeepers told me that someone had bought all the red morning clothes on the entire street half an hour earlier than me. Time waited for no one, so I hurriedly ran out of the street, preparing to go to the funeral supply store near the hospital to ask. Just as I was about to drive out, an old woman stopped me. She was as thin as a bone, hunched over, and asked me, "Are you trying to buy red morning clothes?" I nodded hastily. The old woman told me that she had a set of morning clothes at home that she could sell to me. I followed her to her house. She lived on the 5th floor, but the room was gloomy, and there was no light at all, and there was a rotten smell in the room. "Here, these are the morning clothes I bought for my daughter. It's just that when my daughter was dying, she said that she didn't want to wear morning clothes. She just wanted to wear her favorite dress, so the morning clothes were put aside." The old woman struggled to pull a box out from under the bed, patted the dust off it, then unlocked it, revealing a blood-red morning dress. There were 5 buttons on the dress, and the top and skirt were embroidered with phoenixes, with gold thread, which looked both eerie and lifelike. "The name of this morning dress is Mother of the World." The old woman looked me up and down and asked, "Are you satisfied?" I nodded. "How much is this?" The old woman tilted her head to look at me and slowly stretched out 2 fingers. 2,000 yuan. Ordinary morning clothes cost about 1,000 T, but hers was twice as expensive. But now it was important not to be entangled by the lustful ghost, so I could only grit my teeth and agree. After I gave the cash to the old woman, she put the morning clothes in a large plastic bag and handed it to me. I turned to leave, but accidentally the bag knocked over a family photo frame on the table next to me. I'm sorry. I hurriedly picked up the frame, but was surprised to find that the photo was a 3-person family photo. The photo, there was an old woman, an old man, about the same age as the old woman, and a boy in his 20s. I became puzzled. Why was there no picture of the old woman's daughter in the family photo? Although I was curious, I didn't want to pry. I thought, maybe the old woman deliberately cut out the picture of her daughter, so as not to be reminded of her. When I got home, my mother had already prepared lunch. There was stewed fish, stir-fried vegetables, and stir-fried beans, which looked very delicious and rich. My dad was already back from work. He sat on the chair at the dining table and gave me a surprised look. "What's in that big bag of yours?" "It's morning clothes." I sighed and told my dad, "Dad, don't go to work for the next few days. Mom is being haunted by a lustful ghost." My dad obviously didn't believe it. He sneered, "Are you kidding me? You're still a college student. How can you still believe in ghosts?" I had no choice but to show my dad the video I recorded last night. After watching the video, my dad's face turned pale and embarrassed. He said he was going to worship Buddha and ask a tourist priest for help, and he also said he was going to move to another place. "Dad, have you forgotten? My boyfriend James is a descendant of a ghost hunter in California. He has a way to save us." I hurriedly comforted him. James said, "You don't go anywhere tonight. Just stay with Mom. The lustful ghost will definitely not dare to touch Mom." My dad looked at me with concern and asked, "What about you?" I pointed to the morning clothes and said, "Tonight I will wear these morning clothes and hide under the bed. The ghost can't find me. Naturally, it can't hurt me." My dad was relieved. After a while, my mother came out of the kitchen with a large basin of boiled white meat. She smiled and said to my dad, "You are the one who works hard to make money for the family. You should eat more meat." My dad picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. He frowned. "Caitlin, this meat has no taste. Did you forget to add salt?" My mother took a sip of the soup with a spoon, and she also frowned. "Hey, that's strange. I added a lot of salt. Why is there no taste at all?" "Mom, let me try it." I was in college and my family still had a mortgage of $5,000 or $6,000 a month, and my mother was sick, so the family economy has always been very tight. To be honest, my family looked decent, but in fact we could only eat meat once a month. I was craving meat, so I hurriedly picked up a piece and was about to eat it. But as soon as I put it in my mouth, I spat it out immediately. The meat was extremely salty. It was so salty that it was as if I had just taken a bite of salt, not meat. I asked while spitting, "Dad, Mom, what's wrong with your mouths? This meat is so salty, and you say it has no taste." It really has no taste. As my mother spoke, she walked into the kitchen, took out a bag of salt, and poured the whole bag directly into the white meat. She tasted it as she poured. "It's strange. Why do I feel that there is still no taste after adding so much salt?" My dad shook his head. "It may be that the stewing time is not long enough, and the salt is not tasty." As he spoke, he picked up a piece of stewed fish and put it into his mouth, smacking his lips, and said, "This one tastes better." I also picked up some fish meat suspiciously, but I was surprised to find that the fish meat was undercooked, and there was blood on the eyeballs of the fish. But my dad ate it with relish. I sighed heavily in my heart. My dad definitely didn't want my mother to think that her cooking was bad. Saying, the sunset, dusk came and night fell. James called me and asked me, "Lucy, did you do as I said? Did you put on the red morning clothes?" I responded and connected my phone to the wireless headset. In the earphones, James' voice was steady and gentle. "Lucy, don't be afraid. I have already booked the ticket and will be by your side tomorrow." I took a deep breath and crawled under the bed. The night got darker and darker. I couldn't hold back my tiredness. I slowly closed my eyes and fell asleep. Cold. At this time, there was a gradual dong-dong sound from outside the door. My whole body shook, and I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. It must be the wistful ghost. The sound lingered in front of my mother's room door for a while. After a while, it came towards my room. His footsteps were loud and hurried. I think maybe the lustful ghost saw my dad by my mother's side and couldn't do anything since he was angry. Then I heard a click. My door was opened. Boom, boom. Hearing the sound so close at hand, my scalp went numb and my body couldn't help shaking. I didn't even dare to take a breath. I could only close my eyes tightly, grit my teeth, and pray silently that the lustful ghost would not find me and leave quickly. At this time, I suddenly felt a cold and bone-chilling wind blowing past my ears. The wind seemed to be blowing at me. It blew on my ears again and again. It made my ears hurt and itch. I suddenly thought, I clearly closed the window. How could there be wind in the house? I was horrified and opened my eyes. I saw a thin, blue-skinned male corpse standing beside the bed, staring straight at me with its head touching the ground in a weird posture. Intense fear made me scream. The corpse's head jumped a few times with a dong-dong, and a sinister smile came from its purple lips. Hey, you didn't expect this, did you? I died from jumping off a building head first. What's wrong, Lucy? What's wrong? James's very nervous and worried voice came from my earphones. What happened? Tell me quickly. It's here. It's not walking on tiptoe. I curled up and squeezed into the innermost part of the bed, trembling with fear and shouting at its upside down it sees me. What? James's voice was a little shocked and puzzled. He hurriedly said, no, the morning clothes you're wearing conceal your life force. Even if it died from landing head first, it shouldn't have noticed you. He asked again, Lucy, are you sure the morning clothes you bought are red? At this time, the lustful ghost kept hugging its body upside down, while tapping its head on the ground, while stretching out its dry and bony hand and hooking me hard. His voice was very sharp, full of lust and impatience. Hey, I'm going to catch you. I tried my best to stick my body to the wall in the corner of the bed, and shouted to James in a hoarse voice, help me. This ghost is about to catch me. What should I do? There's something wrong with your morning clothes. Take them off first, James said calmly. After you take off the morning clothes, bite your tongue, immediately spit the blood on the tip of your tongue on the morning clothes, and then throw it out from under the bed. This is a blindfold that can temporarily confuse the ghost. I hurriedly did as he said. After the morning clothes, stained with my blood, were thrown out, the lustful ghost really didn't notice me anymore. With his neck twisted at a 90-degree angle, he lay on his stomach, pounced on the red morning clothes, and kept shaking. This ghost was doing that to the morning clothes. I watched in horror. If it wasn't for the method James taught me, it would be me who would be humiliated under the male ghost. Around 4 or 5 o'clock, the night began to fade, and the east gradually revealed a fish belly white. The male ghost was finally gone. Tess. I crawled out from under the bed, feeling embarrassed and weak. Lucy, things are not over yet. That male ghost will come to you again tonight. James' voice came from the earphones again. He said, now you take a good look at this morning clothes. Is it really red? I resisted the nausea and fear and began to flip the morning clothes at the foot of the bed. The surface of this morning dress is indeed red. I paused. It's just that the lining of the morning dress is blue-gray. Alas, the blue-gray color is the most attractive to ghosts. James sighed heavily. People who make morning clothes know that the lining and outer material of the morning clothes are very particular. They must be the same color. You must have been haunted by someone with a heart. My heart skipped a beat and I began to feel terrified. There were no red morning clothes on the entire funeral street. But why, by such a coincidence, did that old woman have red morning clothes? It must be that old woman who designed to harm me. How hateful she was. I couldn't care less about washing up. I went straight to the old woman's house and yelled at her angrily. Why did you harm me? You clearly knew that I wanted morning clothes, not blue-gray morning clothes. The old woman glanced at me indifferently. What I gave you was indeed a red morning dress. It's just that you didn't check the lining of the morning dress carefully. You obviously don't have a daughter, but you keep such a set of morning clothes. You deliberately used it to harm me, right? I pointed to her family photo frame and stared at her fiercely. Your heart is so vicious. Silly child, I didn't harm you, but I saved you. The old woman suddenly smiled. Let me tell you, living people can't wear red mourning clothes. Once they wear them, they will have no life force. Of course, I know that. I glared at her hatefully. I just want to have no life force, so that the lustful ghost won't find me. The old woman looked at me and she said word by word. Then, do you know that if a living person wears red mourning clothes for 7 consecutive days, his 3 souls and 7 spirits will leave the body and become a real dead person? My heart skipped a beat. James meant to let me wear red mourning clothes to avoid the harm of the lustful ghost. But this old woman said that I would die if I wore mourning clothes for 7 consecutive days. Could it be that James wanted to harm me? No, that's not right. He just wanted me to wear red mourning clothes and hide under the bed to avoid the lustful ghost for 1 night. But he didn't let me wear mourning clothes for 7 consecutive days. After figuring it out, I glanced at the old woman coldly. Don't talk nonsense. Here, I won't believe you. After speaking, I was about to leave, but a compassionate smile appeared on the old woman's face, and she said, You are in great trouble, and you don't even know it. I couldn't help but said, What do you mean? Are you cursing me to death? There is black air on your body, and the black air is overflowing from your temples. The old woman tilted her head, stared at me, and said slowly, The black air on your body is so strong, which means that there is a ghost in your house that is more terrifying and vicious than a lustful ghost. Impossible. I yelled. There are only me and my parents in my family. My parents are fine. A look of doubt appeared in the old woman's eyes. She stared at me carefully for a long time and said in a certain tone, I can never be wrong. There must be something wrong with your family. Her firm tone made me feel a little suspicious. I suddenly thought of the half-cooked stewed fish and the boiled white made with a whole bag of salt at noon yesterday. My mother has been cooking for more than 20 years and she has never made such low-level mistakes. And the most important thing is that my dad has high blood pressure and he won't eat food that has a little more salt. But yesterday, my dad ate it with relish. Could it be that my parents were really ghosts? Yes, Seb. No, I don't believe it. Ghosts are souls, they are not veal, and it is impossible to cook. Seeing that I was a little shaken, the old woman said, Ghosts are most afraid of black dog blood. You go home and buy some black dog blood and sprinkle it on your parents. If your parents are corroded by black dog blood, then they are most likely walking corpses that can control corpses. If they are really walking corpses, you must pay attention. In addition to liking to repeat the habits of living people before their lives, walking corpses also like to chop living people into pieces and cook them in boiling water. After leaving the old woman's house, I made a video call to James and asked if black dog blood could exorcise ghosts. He nodded. Black dog blood does have this effect, but it can only hurt ghosts, not kill them. I knew what was going on, and asked him again, if I wear red mourning clothes for 7 consecutive days, will I lose my soul and die? On the other end of the video, James hesitated for a while before saying, if you wear it for 7 days in a row, you will definitely die. But Lucy, I didn't intend to let you wear it for 7 days. I just want you to get through the night first. Now I'm on my way to New York. I'll be back tonight to protect you. James' honesty made me relieved. He was my boyfriend, and he must have really cared about me. I thought again, he would come back tonight to help me deal with the lustful ghost. I should still focus on seeing if my parents were ghosts. I went to the vegetable market, bought a steaming portion of black dog blood, and put it in a disposable box and went home. Opening the door of the house, the dining table was already full of dishes. It was still stewed fish, stir-fried vegetables, and stir-fried beans. And what is even more bizarre is that the placement of these dishes is almost exactly the same as yesterday. It was as if the dishes eaten yesterday were put back in the same way today without being touched. My mother came out of the kitchen with a bowl of boiled white meat. She smiled and said to my dad, "You are the one who works hard to make money for the family. You should eat more meat." My dad casually picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into his mouth. He frowned. "Caitlin, this meat has no taste. Did you forget to add salt?" I stared wide-eyed. At this moment, what my dad and my mom said was exactly the same as what they said yesterday. My heart was beating wildly, and it almost jumped out of my throat. "Lucy, come and eat too." As my mother spoke, she turned and went to the kitchen, took out a bag of salt, and poured it into the white meat. I froze my face, pale, and said to my mother, "Mom, it looks like it's going to rain outside. Why don't we put away the clothes first and then eat?" My mother glanced at the weather outside. "Oh, it's really going to rain. I have to put away the clothes quickly." After my mother left, I used the excuse of asking my dad to get the express delivery downstairs to get rid of him. While they were away, I hurriedly poured all the black dog blood into the dishes. If my parents were ghosts, they would definitely show their true colors after eating these dishes. A few minutes later, my mother returned to the dining table. She picked up the bowl, picked up a piece of white meat, and was about to eat it. But in the end, she didn't put the meat into her mouth, but frowned and muttered, "I just chopped this meat. Why does it smell so bad?" I said cautiously, "Mom, this meat doesn't stink. I think it smells good." My mother was full of doubts. She stretched her neck, sniffed the white meat vigorously, but refused to eat it. A look of disgust gradually appeared on her face. "This meat is really smelly, like it came from a trash can." Click. The living room door was opened, and my dad walked in. He glanced at me. "Lucy, there is no express delivery for you downstairs." As he spoke, he sat down on the dining chair, impatiently picked up the meat and stuffed it into his mouth. "Hurry up and eat. I'm starving to death." But the next moment, my dad's expression froze. Pain and anger filled his face. The white meat was no longer delicious, but like poison boiled in boiling water, hot and poisonous. There's black dog blood in this meat." My dad screamed in pain and spit out the meat with a "Wow." His face turned blue-gray and quickly rotted and festered. Large chunks of skin tissue fell off his body. The room was filled with the smell of blood, and the floor was covered with minced meat. My throat was stuck as if by a hard stone. I was so scared that I couldn't breathe. My dad, he was a walking corpse. After a while, all the flesh on my dad's body had fallen off. He became a bloody skeleton. At this time, his half-rotted blue-gray eyeballs, nestled in his eye sockets, stared straight at me. He put the black dog blood in it. Before I had time to speak, I turned around and wanted to run. But behind me, my mother blocked my way. Her head was as if it had been pressed down hard by a pair of invisible big hands, and she stared at me with a forward twisted and misplaced posture. Her expression was gloomy, and she said with a half-smile, "We pretended so well, but you still found out." I immediately squatted down, trying to crawl over from under the dining table. "Want to run?" At this time, my dad stretched out a pair of bloody skeleton arms with flesh and blood attached to them, and pressed them on my shoulders like a boulder. The tips of his bloody, bony fingers squeezed into my flesh inch by inch, his voice angry and cold. "You found out our secret, but you can't escape." My dad was using a lot of strength. His fingertips had pierced my skin and touched my shoulder blade. I gritted my teeth and pushed him hard, but he didn't move. I was in pain and despair. Unexpectedly, I did not die at the hands of the lustful ghost, but at the hands of my own parents. Don't kill me. Tears streamed down my face as I pleaded with my father. "Dad, it's me. It's your daughter, Lucy." "Daughter." My dad froze, but the next moment his fingers were stronger. The corners of his rotten mouth twitched slightly, and the minced meat mixed with blood dripped on me. The smile on the corner of his mouth gradually rose. "The daughter's meat is the most tender. Even if you don't add salt, it will be very delicious." "Yes, boiled daughter white meat. It must be very delicious." While speaking, my mother walked into the kitchen. When she came out of the kitchen again, she was holding a sharp knife that gleamed coldly. She raised the knife high at me. "Daughter, don't worry. I won't let you feel any pain." The approach of death made me scream in fright. The flashing cold light pierced my eyes, and I closed my eyes subconsciously. But the next moment, the living room door was kicked open. James rushed over like a god, holding 2 yellow talismans in his hand, and rushed to my side with lightning speed. "Yo!" Before my dad could even speak, the yellow talisman in James' hand had already been stuck to his forehead. After a while, a yellow talisman was also attached to my mother's. They were immobilized as if they had been tapped. I breathed a sigh of relief and hugged James tightly, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. "James, you're finally here. My parents are dead." James patted my shoulder gently. "Don't be afraid, Lucy. I'm here. They can't hurt you anymore." I bit my lip tightly, and through tears, I stared at my parents. My father's skin tissue was completely rotten. He really turned into a skeleton. And my mother was not much better, looking fragmented like a patchwork rag doll. Your parents should have been dead for a long time, so their bodies are rotten and decayed. James gently took my hand and walked up to my parents. He looked at it carefully for a while and said, "But after they died, they can still move. Obviously, they have become walking corpses." I couldn't help but ask, why did my parents become walking corpses? "There are many reasons." James thought for a while and said slowly, "Your parents may have been trained as walking corpses by a ghost trainer. Maybe they enshrined some kind of evil thing, were backlashed by the evil thing, and became walking corpses. Of course, there's another possibility. That is, your parents had obsessions before they died, and their ghosts didn't want to be reincarnated, so they willingly attached themselves to their corpses and became walking corpses. My parents have been honest all their lives. They haven't even been out of the city. It's impossible to know any ghost trainers. It's even more impossible for them to enshrine ghosts," I said without thinking. "They must have obsessions." Suddenly, I thought of something. Even if my parents were walking corpses, but they never hurt me. If I hadn't listened to the old woman's words and tested my parents with Black Dog, my parents wouldn't have hurt me like this. Intense hatred welled up in my heart. That damned old woman. I really wished she were dead. "Lucy, Lucy." James noticed something was wrong with me. He squeezed my hand. "You don't look right. What's wrong?" I asked word by word. "James, are walking corpses evil ghosts? Do they like to repeat the habits of living people before their lives? And do they also like to chop living people into pieces and cook them in boiling water?" There are good and bad people, and the same goes for walking corpses. But generally speaking, walking corpses do have the habit of repeating the habits of people before their lives. As for eating living people, it varies from ghost to ghost. James explained, if your parents are willing to become walking corpses because they are worried about you, they generally don't want to eat you. But of course, there are exceptions. At first, low-level walking corpses only have the ability to possess and control their own corpses. But as time goes by, the body will gradually rot. In order to prevent the body from rotting and to protect themselves, the walking corpse will split. It will split into a vicious walking corpse. Usually they don't show a vicious side, but once they are hurt, the vicious side will appear and they will uncontrollably want to eat people. It's that old woman, she seduced me and made my parents split into bad walking corpses. I gritted my teeth and said, Keith, let's go. Let's go find that old woman and settle the score. I was about to drag James to find the old woman, but he stopped me. Lucy, our top priority. Now is the lustful ghost. Speaking of this, James' brows began to frown again. Lucy, lustful ghosts are not the most powerful among many ghosts, but they are indeed the most difficult to deal with. I said without thinking, now that you are by my side, I will be fine. Lucy, if you had avoided the lustful ghost by wearing red morning clothes last night, you should have been fine. James smiled wryly. However, you were discovered by him last night. In the world of lustful ghosts, women can be shared. But even if this ghost is sealed and killed by me, other lustful ghosts will follow the scent. You will be found until you are entangled to death. My whole body froze. Other lustful ghosts will find me too. Cold sweat covered my back. My body went limp, and I was full of fear. James, what should I do? I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. James rubbed my hair. Since ancient times, there is no way out. Lucy, lustful ghosts are not scary. Just give me some time, and I will definitely wipe them all out. He added, now let's go to the funeral supplies store again and buy another set of red morning clothes. I hesitated for a moment, but if I wear red morning clothes for 7 days in a row, I will die. Jane smiled and said, don't worry, I will never let you wear it for 7 days. We went to the funeral supplies store near the hospital, bought a set of red cheongsam morning clothes, a sack of thick incense, and a sack of yellow ghost money. I couldn't help asking, why do I need ghost money and incense? He said, these incense and ghost money are burned for the underworld officials, asking them to help catch the nearby lustful ghosts. These underworld officials are greedy for money, so they will naturally help. I muted, secretly thinking that James was meticulous, and I would be fine. Unexpectedly, an old lady with faltering steps walked outside the funeral supplies store. Her face was covered with wrinkles, her eyes almost flattened by the wrinkles. It was she who instigated me to use black dog blood on my parents. With a gloomy face, I yelled at her angrily, I haven't settled the score with you yet. How dare you appear in front of me? The old woman smiled indifferently. Girl, what score do you want to settle with me? Do you know that walking corpses will sooner or later be replaced by a vicious side that is divided? That is to say, sooner or later you will be eaten alive by your parents. And I let you find out in advance. You should thank me. She made my parents become skeletons, and she still wants me to thank her. I put down the morning clothes bag, clenched my fists, and wanted to punch her hard in the face. But James grabbed my hand. He lowered his voice and said in my ear, Lucy, don't be impulsive. She is a ghost trainer. There are at least a dozen ghosts around her protecting her. Jane's ancestors were ghost hunters. He had been learning how to exorcise ghosts since he was a child, so he definitely wouldn't lie to me. I was angry and hated the old woman, but I couldn't help feeling scared. I stared at her and said, "Old woman, why are you here?" "I'm here to remind you, your boyfriend is not a good person. He is not sincere to you." The old woman's smile grew wider, almost spreading to the back of her ears, and I vaguely saw her soft tongue in her mouth. She continued, "You are holding a red cheongsam mourning dress in your hand, right? Let me tell you the cheongsam mourning dress is used to appease the souls of young girls who died unjustly. If you wear it for 3 consecutive days, you will die suddenly. The first time you appeared, you caused me to be discovered by the lustful ghost, and the second time you appeared, you almost caused me to be eaten by my parents." I stared at her with hatred. "This time you appeared and deliberately provoked the relationship between me and my boyfriend. Do you think I will believe you?" The old woman shook her head with a heartbroken look. "Girl, good medicine is bitter, but good advice is harsh. If you don't believe me, it will be too late to regret it. Lucy, leave her alone. Let's go." James took my hand and walked out of the funeral supplies store. As we left, I brushed past the old woman. She seemed to be doing it on purpose, and nudged me hard with her elbow. I couldn't bear it anymore, and pushed her hard. "What the hell are you trying to do? Let me tell you, if you push me too far, I will die with you." "Alas, girl, I see that you are young, and I really can't bear to see you die so confused. I just tell you directly, besides the lustful ghost and the walking corpse, there's also a 100-year-old ghost that has been dead for 100 years, and has not become stiff. You really will not live past 3 nights, and your soul will be scattered to prolong the life of this old ghost." The old woman shook her head and smiled. It's a pity. You don't even know you're about to die." The century-old ghost she was referring to was obviously James by my side. But I don't trust the old woman at all now. No. At this moment, I even hope that I can have some supernatural powers to punish this damned old woman severely. Not long after we left the funeral supplies store, James stopped and looked at me carefully. I couldn't help asking what's wrong. He reached out and patted my shoulder and said, "That old man is a ghost trainer. I'm worried that she will curse you when she touched you just now." My whole body tensed up. "Then, and okay? Did you see anything?" James looked at me carefully, again shook his head, and said, "There is no curse. Maybe I'm thinking too much." I was relieved. On the way back, we happened to come across a wedding procession. The bride in the car had a happy smile on her face. She was wearing a white wedding dress and holding a bunch of orchids of the same color. She looked extremely beautiful. When James saw it, he stretched out his hand and hugged me tightly and said, "Lucy, let's get married after we deal with the lustful ghosts around you, okay?" I was about to agree, but the next moment, I choked out James. "My parents just passed away not long ago. It would be too unfilial for me to marry you like this." James hurriedly apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I didn't think carefully." I leaned in his arms, tears streaming down my face. "Even more, James, I don't have my parents anymore. I only have you." "James, though, Lucy, I will take good care of you." Immediately afterwards, he asked me, "Lucy, your parents are now immobilized by my spell, but they are half rotted and they can't be kept at home all the time."
"What? You?"
"What are you going to do with them?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I really don't know. My parents died, So suddenly their bodies were already rotten. I couldn't send them to the crematorium. But I can't bury them in the ground either. It is a society ruled by law now, and my family lives in the community. There are so many people here, and the neighbors can see any movement. James also knew my concerns. He hesitated for a while and said, "Lucy, I have a corpse dissolving talisman. As long as you stick it on the corpse, recite the mantra, you can turn the corpse into powder." I bit my lip tightly. Although my parents are dead, according to the rules, they should be kept in the morgue for 3 days before their bodies can be cremated. Otherwise, I would be too unfilial. James nodded, took my hand, and walked all the way to the market near the community. In the market, he bought a few snakes, centipedes, frogs, and other 5 poisonous creatures. I couldn't help asking, "Why did you buy these things?" He said to me, "I am by your side. That lustful ghosts are not come for the time being, but we must take the initiative to attack. The poisonous things I bought are all extremely unknowns. I set up a formation in your house and offered these extremely young things to the ghost messengers, so as to invite the ghost messengers to destroy the lustful ghosts." Back home, James took the 5 poisons to the kitchen. He said that it was necessary to drain the blood of the 5 poisons and then refine them with talisman water. The kitchen was so bloody that I didn't dare to take a closer look, so I ran to my parents' room. The room was filled with an indescribable stench, and my parents lay stiffly on the bed like wood. It's just that the bed is covered with rotten debris. I knelt down in front of them with a plot. "Mom and Dad, my daughter is not filial. You died, and I still can't let you rest in peace." As I spoke, I couldn't help but shed tears again. Tears gradually blurred my eyes. I cried so hard that I couldn't catch my breath. Ding dong. At this moment, a message suddenly came from my mobile phone. I hurriedly opened it. I saw that the sender of the message was actually my mother. The content of the message is, "Lucy, you must be careful of James." This line of news was obviously sent out before it was finished. Be careful of James. Before I could think about it, another layer of fear welled up in my heart. My mother is obviously dead. Why can she still send me messages? Unless my mom set up timed messages. But why did my mom set up timed messages? Who the hell is this James? For a while, my heart was in a mess. The more I tried to figure it out, the more confused I became. "Mom, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have tested you with black dog blood." I knelt by the bed, calling to my mother, non-stop. About an hour later, James's voice came from the kitchen. "Lucy, come and help." I hurriedly got up and walked over. "We're going to have a big fight tonight. I have to set up the formation in advance." James handed me a roll of black thread. He said, "It's getting dark soon. There's no time, and I'm refining the 5 poisons. You can help me to shrink this black thread along the corner of the wall and surround it into a circle." I took the black thread. The thread had a strong rancid smell which was very choking. I subconsciously wanted to throw it away, but James caught it quickly. He sighed. "This is a thread soaked in black dog blood, which can trap lustful ghosts." A trace of doubt emerged in my heart. "James, I bought black dog, but the black dog blood didn't smell so bad at that time." James smiled and said, "You bought fresh black dog blood at the market, right? Mine is old dog blood that has been frozen in the refrigerator for 49 days, so it naturally smells stronger." I had no choice but to put on a mask, bear the nausea, and do as he said honestly. As I bent over to lay the wires, a note fell out of the pocket. in front of my collar. There were only a few crooked lines on the note. Poor man died at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. I concentrated and thought about it carefully. I spent the whole day with James, and the only person who could touch me today was that old woman. So this note was given to me by her. Her meaning was obvious, saying that I am a hard-luck person and will die at 12 o'clock in the evening. I smeared and tore up the note. Seeing that she couldn't provoke the relationship between me and James, the old woman started to scare me. It's a pity that I won't fall for her tricks again. About an hour later, I used up the entire row of black thread. At this time, the living rooms and balconies were all covered with black lines. As soon as I finished arranging, James had already drained the blood of the 5 poisons. He soaked the incense and ghost money he bought in blood. I was stunned. If you soak the incense and ghost money in blood, won't they be able to be ignited? A mysterious smile appeared on James's face. You'll know later. When the ghost money was taken out of the blood basin, it dripped on the ground, which looked extremely disgusting. But James kept chanting words, and after a while the ghost money ignited spontaneously. Not only the ghost money, but the blood-stained incense also began to burn. At this time, it was already dark. James kept chanting mantras in a low voice. The incense was burning faster and faster, and a lot of white ashes had accumulated on the ground. But as the mantra was chanted, his face became paler and paler, his body swayed, and he almost fell down. It wasn't until the last piece of ghost money was burned and the last stick of incense burned out that James said in a weak voice, "Easy. Put these white ashes on the bed now and arrange them in a human shape." My Hetty did as he said. Just as I put all the ashes on the bed, there was a plop from the living room. I hurried over, but saw that James had fallen to the ground. "James? James?" I yelled his name. James opened his eyes with difficulty. He stretched out his hand and gently touched my cheek and said, "Lucy, don't worry." The mantra I chanted just now is communicating with the ghost messenger, and the ghost messenger has agreed to help. But people and ghosts communicate, and they will definitely lose their yang energy. I am weak now, so you have to do everything yourself. I agreed with tears in my eyes. "Okay, James, tell me, what should I do?" "Tonight a lot of lustful ghosts will come to you." James' voice was very soft, but every word was clear. "Hear that the ghost messengers will help you, but there will inevitably be fish that slip through the net. You have to remember that the lustful ghosts who can find you are no longer ordinary lustful ghosts. The mustard is a lustful ghost who has tortured and killed hundreds of girls. This kind of lustful ghost is extremely lustful. When they see you, they will definitely want to get you impatiently. But at the same time, when they see the incense ash in the shape of a human being beside you, which is offered to the ghost messenger, they will be afraid of you. So on the one hand, they covet you, and on the other hand, they are afraid of you, but they still can't restrain your natural desires, so they will ask you a lot of questions. For example, they will ask you if you meet a man, can you give them your body? I supported James and said, then what should I do when they ask me questions? Should I answer them or ignore them? You have to remember that ghosts are the opposite of people. If they ask you if you can give them your body, you say yes. In the world of ghosts, if you say yes, it means no. Then they will leave you. I nodded. Okay, I got it. Late that night, I lay alone on the bed, wearing a red Chinese morning dress. But I no longer have the fear and tension of last night. In my earphones, James says even breathing could be heard. He wasn't asleep. He was hiding behind the curtains by the window. If anything happened to me, he would come out and save me immediately. Time passed slowly, probably because James and I were in the same room. I felt safe and I felt drowsy again. Just as I was about to close my eyes, I suddenly remembered the words written on the note. Poor man died at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. I suddenly lost all sleepiness. I couldn't help but hide under the quilt and secretly turn on my phone. It's 11:59. My heart began to gradually become uneasy. It's 1 minute to 12 o'clock. What happens after midnight? While my thoughts were racing, I felt the cold mist of the yin wind blowing past my ears again. My heart skipped a beat and cold sweat oozed from my spine. Now I truly hiding under the covers. The lust of ghosts still came in. The yin wind blew into my ears again and again, very close to me, as if it was blowing against my earlobe. By the dim light of my mobile phone, I raised my head stiffly and saw an upside-down, blue-black and shriveled man's face. Extreme fear made my eyes widen and my breathing began to stagnate. But luckily, this man didn't touch me. His eyeballs were rolling around in their sockets, and he kept looking me up and down. After a long time, he said gloomily, "Are you alone?" I subconsciously wanted to say no. But then I thought about what Jane said, that ghosts are the opposite of humans. Thinking of this, I bit the bullet and said yes. The man's face suddenly deflated. He stared at me straight, his tone also tinged with coldness. "Do you need a man?" Yes. I still tried my best to suppress my fear and answered according to the method. James cut me. "Can you give me your body?" Yes. Disappointment appeared on the lustful ghost's face. He murmured, "What a pity! What a pity!" After finishing speaking, he actually disappeared. I let out a long sigh of relief. But before I could fully relax, another lustful ghost appeared. Like the previous ghost, he walked upside down with his head down. His face was blue and black, and his eyes were gloomy. He slowly approached me, leaned close to my ear, and said, "Do you need a man?" Yes. Can you give me your body? Yes. Same question, same answer. This lustful ghost also disappeared in disappointment. I gradually gained confidence in my heart, knowing that Jane's method was really effective. But as time went by, more and more lustful ghosts appeared one after another, asking the same questions. I repeated the answers. James taught me over and over again, but my heart became exhausted. Finally, midnight passed. My tense nerves slowly relaxed, and I felt exhausted. Jane's voice came from earphones. "Lucy, you did. Good job. It's almost dawn, now you're safe." I couldn't help crying, "James, thank you." Jane's voice was still gentle. "Don't cry, Lucy. I'll be right there to pick you up." Same. James came out from behind the curtain. He carefully walked up to me and hugged me. "Lucy, you are very brave." I nodded, leaning in his arms, feeling an unprecedented sense of security. The next morning, James said that he had a friend who was a very powerful ghost hunter who could permanently solve the problem of lustful ghosts. He took me to his friend's house. James' friend was named Isaac, a man in his 40s, somewhat thin but with very sharp eyes. After listening to our story, Isaac nodded and knew what to do. He took out a yellow talisman paper covered with complicated spells and handed it to James. "Put this talisman on Lucy's forehead, tight, and it will completely exorcise the lustful ghost." James took the talisman paper and said solemnly, "Thank you, Isaac." At night, James put the talisman paper on my forehead, according to Isaac's instructions. He comforted me. "Lucy, don't be afraid, I'm here, you'll be fine." I nodded, chanting James' words silently in my heart, trying to relax myself. Just after midnight, I suddenly felt a strong chill. A shadow floated in from the window and slowly approached me. It was a taller and colder ghost than any lustful ghost before, his eyes full of evil and desire. He smiled sinisterly, leaned close to my ear, and asked, "Do you need a man?" I took a deep breath and answered, according to the method James taught me, "Yes." "Can you give me your body?" "Yes." The ghost's eyes were filled with even more desire. He opened his arms as if he wanted to pounce on me. At this moment, the talisman paper pasted on my forehead suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light, which shocked the ghost back a few steps. "He roared angrily, 'You dare to lie to me?'" I resisted the fear and continued to answer, "Yes." The ghost was intimidated by the golden light of the talisman paper, and dared not approach me again, and finally disappeared unwillingly. After dawn, James and Isaac came to my house together, and they put up more talisman papers and barriers in my room. Isaac told me, "Lucy, these talismans and barriers can protect you and prevent you from being harassed by lustful ghosts." I thanked him gratefully. "Thank you, Isaac." Isaac smiled and said, "You're welcome. This is what I should do." With Isaac's help, my life gradually returned to normal. James has also been by my side, protecting me and giving me a sense of security. Although I had experienced so many terrible things, I know that as long as James and Isaac are around, I will no longer be afraid. One evening, James and I were sitting on the balcony, watching the sunset. I leaned gently on his shoulder, my heart filled with gratitude and happiness. James asked me in a low voice, "Lucy, will you marry me?" I nodded with a smile. "I do. Although we have experienced many hardships, I know that as long as we have love and trust, we will be able to overcome any difficulties." However, the night before our wedding, James suddenly received an urgent call. He told me with a solemn face, "Lucy, I have to go and deal with a very urgent matter. You wait for me at home first." I was a little uneasy, but still nodded. "Okay, James. Be careful." After James left in a hurry, I stayed at home alone with a bad feeling in my heart. At midnight, there was a sudden knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. I carefully walked to the door and looked out through the peephole. Standing outside the door was a strange man who looked very nervous and kept knocking on the door. Lucy opened the door quickly. "It's me, it's Mand. Something happened to James." My heart jumped to my throat, and I hurriedly opened the door. "Isaac, what happened to James?" Isaac said with a serious face, "James was seriously injured when he was dealing with a very powerful ghost. I must take you to see him now." I was so anxious that tears were about to flow out. "Okay, Isaac, let's go." Isaac took me into the car. We drove all the way and soon arrived in front of a dilapidated house. Isaac pushed the door open and led me in. The house was filled with a gloomy atmosphere that made me shiver. Isaac took me to a room and motioned for me to go in. I pushed the door open and saw James lying on the bed, his face pale and his eyes full of pain. I rushed to his side and grabbed his hand. "James, how are you?" James forced a smile. "Lucy, I'm fine. I just got a little hurt." I looked at him with distress. "James, you must get well soon." At this moment, Isaac walked into the room with a small bottle in his hand. "Lucy, This is the medicine I prepared. Give it to James, and he will recover soon. I took the bottle and carefully fed James a drink. Isaac comforted me. Lucy, don't worry, James will be fine. I nodded, feeling a little relieved. But at this moment, I suddenly felt a strong sense of dizziness. My eyes went dark, and I passed out. When I woke up again, I found myself tied to a chair, surrounded by darkness, only a faint light in the distance. I struggled a bit, but found that I couldn't move, and a strong fear surged in my heart. At this time, a familiar voice sounded in the darkness. Lucy, are you awake? I tried my best to open my eyes and saw James walking out of the darkness with a sneer on his face. My heart sank. James, what's going on? Why did you tie me up? James walked up to me slowly and said coolly, Lucy, do you still remember what the old woman said? She was right. I am not who you think I am. My heart sank. James, who the hell are you? Jane's eyes turned cold. I am an old ghost who has been dead for 100 years and has not become stiff. I need your soul to continue my life. I immediately understood everything. My heart was full of despair and anger. James, you lied to me all this time. Jane sneered. That's right. I planned all of this from the very beginning. At this time, Isaac also walked out of the darkness with the same cold expression on his face. Lucy, did you really think we would help you? I looked at them, my heart full of despair. Why? Why did you do this? Isaac sneered, because your soul is very special. It can give me and James eternal life. I struggled desperately, trying to escape the shackles, but to no avail. James walked up to me, reached out and gently stroked my face. Lucy, don't be afraid. It will be over soon. As soon as he finished speaking, I felt a sharp ping coming from my chest, as if a sharp blade had pierced my body. I let out a scream. My eyes went dark, and I passed out again. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in a white space with no one around. I struggled to get up and looked around but couldn't see anything. At this time, a gentle voice sounded in my ear. Lucy, are you okay? I turned around and saw a man in a white robe with a warm smile on his face. My heart was suddenly filled with hope. Who are you? The man smiled and said, I am your guardian angel. I have been protecting you. Tears welled up in my eyes. Guardian angel, what should I do? James and Isaac want to kill me. The guardian angel patted me on the shoulder gently. Don't be afraid, Lucy. I will help you. As soon as he finished speaking, I felt a warm force coming from his palm, instantly dispelling the fear in my heart. The guardian angel smiled and said, Lucy, close your eyes now and follow my guidance. I nodded, closed my eyes, and felt a gentle force surrounding me. After a while, I opened my eyes again and found myself back in that dark room. James and Isaac were still standing in front of me, but their expressions were horrified. The guardian angel appeared beside me, his figure emitting a dazzling light. James took a step back in horror. You? How could you have a guardian angel? Isaac's face turned pale. Impossible. This is impossible. The guardian angel smiled and said, Lucy, now you can fight back. I felt a powerful force pouring into my body. I clenched my fists and walked towards James and Isaac. James and Isaac looked at me in horror and backed away. No. I looked at them coldly, my heart full of anger. You killed my prince, and now you want to kill me. I will not let you go. After speaking, I punched James. He let out a scream. His body instantly turned into ashes. Isaac turned around in horror and wanted to escape, but was blocked by the guardian angel. The guardian angel said coldly, "Isaac, you can't escape." I walked up to Isaac, clenched my fists, and punched him in the chest with all my strength. Isaac let out a scream, and his body instantly turned into ashes. It was finally over. I let out a long sigh of relief, feeling an unprecedented ease. The guardian angel smiled at me and said, "Lucy, you did a good job. It's all over now." I looked at him gratefully. "Thank you, guardian angel. Thank you for saving me." The guardian angel patted me on the shoulder. Gently, "Lucy, you can go back to your normal life. Now I will always guard you." I nodded, my heart full of hope and gratitude. Since then, my life gradually returned to peace. Although I have experienced so many terrible things, I know that as long as I have a guardian angel, I will no longer be afraid. The conspiracy of James and Isaac was smashed, and I regained the courage and hope of life. Whenever I think of that experience, my heart is always filled with gratitude and warmth, because I know that no matter what difficulties we encounter, as long as we have love and trust, we will be able to overcome everything.